Wow, we have a very packed room here today. Thank you all so much for showing up and for joining. I apologize for the delay. The president and I were watching the press conference about the search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, which is just a heartbreaking situation. The president, as you all know, spoke directly with Savannah yesterday and told her that the federal government is here to help. Any requests that are made by state and local officials in the search of Miss Guthrie will absolutely be accommodated. I spoke with the FBI directly about that today as well. And our hearts and our prayers are with Savannah and her entire family as they search for her dear mother. I also have a quick scheduling announcement for all of you. Tonight at 7 p.m. during prime time, President Trump, Dr. Oz, and National Design Studio Director Joe Gebbia will officially unveil Trump RX, a state-of-the-art website for American consumers to purchase low-cost prescription drugs. This historic announcement will save millions of Americans their hard-earned money, so make sure to tune in tonight, and we will see all of you in the news media there. President Trump promised to restore law and order to the United States of America, and newly released data proves he is delivering overwhelmingly on this promise. A study from the Council on Criminal Justice shows that the murder rate across America's largest cities plummeted in 2025 to its lowest level since at least 1900. Again, let me repeat, to put this in perspective, this marks the largest single-year drop in murders in recorded history. This dramatic decline is what happens when a president secures the border, fully mobilizes federal law enforcement to arrest violent criminals, and aggressively deports the worst of the worst illegal aliens from our country. The numbers don't lie. Under President Trump in 2025, the FBI increased violent crime arrests by 100% compared to the prior year. The FBI also conducted more than 67,000 arrests from Inauguration Day 2025 to January 20th, 2026, which is 197% more arrests than the same period previously. The FBI also disrupted 1,800 gangs and criminal enterprises, a 210% increase from the year prior. The FBI has arrested 1,700 child predators and more than 300 human traffickers across the country. Since President Trump took office, 6 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives have been captured. Right here in our nation's capital, where you all live, so you know it well, whether you choose to report it or not, the president's efforts to make D.C. safe and beautiful have worked. As of last week, D.C. homicides were down 62%, motor vehicle theft down 53%, and 2025 had the fewest violent gun crimes of any year of available data in our nation's capital. For more proof that these tough-on-crime efforts are working, look at the president's Make Memphis Safe Again campaign. As of last week, there have been nearly 5,600 arrests made, and aggravated assaults are down 53%. Sexual assaults are down 53%, and robberies are down 70%. Again, that's just in the city of Memphis. 5,600 arrests have taken place because of this president and his Homeland Security Task Force that has surged into Memphis at the request of both the governor and the mayor in that city. A Democrat mayor, I will add. These are the results that can happen when Democrats and Republicans, when the federal government and state and local officials work together. And that's what Trump wants to see to improve public safety across our country. When you have a leader like President Trump who empowers good cops to be cops and to arrest bad criminals, American communities will become safer. Many of the media outlets in this room have expressed shock and confusion at these remarkable statistics. The New York Times declared that, quote, "No one knows for sure what's behind the staggering drop in the murder rate. The reason is very clear. It is President Trump's leadership and his unwavering commitment to law and order. The drop in crime is more proof that all that is required to improve public safety on our streets is a leader with the will to do what is necessary to protect law-abiding American citizens. The terror and chaos that was unleashed under Democrat rule is a choice. It's a choice to put violent criminals ahead of innocent Americans, a choice to force us all to live in fear because of soft-on-crime liberal politicians, prosecutors, and judges who lack the basic willingness to do their jobs and put dangerous people behind bars. On November 5th, 2024, the American people made a resounding choice that they've had enough of that, and that's precisely why they re-elected President Trump. So even as Democrats and the liberal media are engaged in hysteria about this administration arresting and deporting violent, criminal, illegal aliens, the undeniable truth is that deporting these individuals is one of the primary reasons why America's streets are safer today than they were 1 year ago when President Trump assumed office. Former President Biden and the Democrats left our borders wide open, and President Trump and the brave men and women of ICE are removing these dangerous criminals. So here are just a few recent examples. Number one, a Venezuelan national and active Tren de Aragua gang member with a rap sheet including homicide, assault, child cruelty, domestic violence, and property damage. This is an individual I can assure you not a single one of you in this room would want in your neighborhood, whether you admit it or not. He entered the U.S. in 2022, and he was released into our country by the Biden administration. He is no longer here, thanks to President Trump. An El Salvadorian national and known MS-13 associate, previously convicted of homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, and kidnapping, arrested for arson, battery, armed carjacking, and assault. He entered illegally in 2016, was released by the Obama administration, and ICE just arrested him on January 8th, 2026. This example shows you how many criminal illegal aliens have been roaming American streets freely because of a lack of attention to this matter from the previous administration, and President Trump is cleaning up their mess. A Cuban national and blood gangs member convicted of multiple homicides and robbery. ICE arrested him on October 27th and removed him on January 6th, 2026. Arresting and deporting these types of illegal criminals is precisely what the American people voted for. And despite desperate recent attempts by Democrats and those in the media to undermine the president's deportation agenda, these efforts are failing. Brand new Harvard-Harris polling shows overwhelming support for President Trump's efforts to protect law-abiding citizens from criminal illegal aliens. Nearly 8 in 10 Americans say criminal illegal aliens should be deported. A solid majority also support deporting all illegal aliens, regardless of additional crimes. And more than 2 in 3 Americans back the Trump administration's common sense requirement that state and local officials cooperate with federal authorities and work to hand over criminal illegal aliens in local jails for swift deportation. Finally, to prevent another invasion of millions of illegal aliens from happening again, President Trump and Secretary Noem delivered the most secure border in American history. 0 illegal aliens were released into our homeland over the past 9 months. This is a truly remarkable achievement. Again, 0 illegal aliens released into the country in 9 months. This is staggering, and it deserves more attention from all of you. Overall, Customs and Border Protection recorded the lowest total encounters in agency history. Daily encounters have fallen by 95%, averaging just 250 apprehensions at the southern border a day. This is compared to over 5,100 daily apprehensions during the Biden years. It's a night and day difference because we finally have a president who enforces the law and lets our law enforcement do their noble jobs of protecting our homeland. When President Trump campaigned on making America safe again, this is exactly what he meant, and the numbers and the results speak for themselves. With that, I will open it up to questions today. We're going to start with Daniel Baldwin from One America News, who is here religiously covering the White House beat every day. So it's good to see you in a chair instead of standing up today. Daniel, thanks for being here, and why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. It's an honor and a privilege to represent One America News in the new media seat. First question on that DHS funding bill. Funding runs out in the better part of 8 days or so. Democrats, at least verbally, are very dug in. What does the White House believe their end goal is when it comes to this funding fight, when it comes to immigration policy at large? What is their end goal when they're dug in a position like this at this point in time?
Well, the president has 2 end goals. One is to obviously keep the government funded and open, and that includes the Department of Homeland Security, which does not just touch upon ICE and Border Patrol, but also FEMA, the United States Coast Guard, the United States Secret Service. These are brave public servants who work to protect our homeland. The president wants these individuals to get paid. Secondly, when it comes to any discussions about immigration policy, the president is never going to waver in his commitment to allow immigration enforcement efforts in this country and to support ICE and Border Patrol in the deportation of illegal alien criminals. I know Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries sent over a very long list of demands, some of which the administration is willing to discuss. Others don't seem like they are grounded in any common sense, and they are non-starters for this administration, but we're not going to negotiate policy from the podium. I'm going to allow the president to do that, and any final decisions that are made will be made ultimately by him. But rest assured, he is never going to allow law enforcement in the jobs that they do, the important jobs that they do, to be undermined.
And secondly, Karoline, the Department of Homeland Security put out a tweet a better part of an hour ago alleging that an illegal alien was involved in a major car wreck in Indiana, killing 4 people, and they allege that the suspect in question came in under the CBP-1 app under the Biden administration and received a commercial driver's license from the state of Pennsylvania. What is the White House's reaction to a situation like this? And what is the White House doing to crack down on cases like this where illegal aliens are obtaining commercial driver's licenses?
Yes, this is another abhorrent example of the border crisis over the past 4 years, and it again exemplifies why the administration must continue and will always continue to fully back and support ICE and Border Patrol and law enforcement in their removal of illegal alien criminals from our country. For those who don't know, and all of you should report on it, 4 Americans were tragically killed and lost their lives this week yet again from an illegal alien, an individual who was paroled into the country by the Biden administration using the CBP-1 app, which they created like it was a magic pass for Disneyland. That's not how immigration in this country should work. And this illegal alien from Kyrgyzstan was traveling on an Indiana highway, and he failed to brake for a slowed semi-truck in front of him. He swerved into the lane, and he crashed into a van carrying 15 passengers, and 4 people were killed in that crash. This is another tragedy that could have been prevented if not for the wide open borders from the previous administration. That's why we now have a secure border. That's why this administration will continue to deport illegal aliens from our country. Thank you for being here. Garrett.
John, thank you for your comments and your prayers for the Guthrie family. I have 2 questions related to the president's interview with NBC yesterday.
Sure.
At one point in the interview, the president said that he believes states are accumulating the votes for who wins the election. He says if they, meaning the states, can't do it honestly and can't be done properly and timely, then something else has to happen. What did he mean by that? Is he suggesting that the federal government count votes in elections?
What the president is suggesting, and I just spoke to him about this, is that Republicans and Democrats in Congress should pass the Save America Act. This piece of legislation is going to ensure that states are abiding by federal election law by removing non-citizens from their voter rolls. In addition, the Save America Act will require voter ID to vote, and it will require proof of citizenship to register to vote. These are very common sense policies and proposals that 89% of our country agree with. So that's what the president is talking about. Again, I just spoke with him about this, and he's calling on both Republicans and Democrats to send the Save America Act, to pass it into law and to send it to his desk as quickly as possible.
To be clear, the SAVE Act doesn't say anything about who counts votes, which has always been a state, a local, a county function. Why does he keep talking about somebody else, presumably the federal government, counting votes?
Because the SAVE Act directs states to remove non-citizens from their voter rolls. And we know in states across the country, the president is right to point this out, in states like California or in places like New York City, non-citizens are allowed to vote in state and local elections. And the federal government should absolutely do away with that. I don't think a single person in this room, if you really are being honest with yourselves, should agree that non-citizens should vote in American elections, no matter where that election is up and down the ticket. And so this is a piece of federal legislation that will help states ensure the integrity and the sanctity of their elections, and that's what the president wants. Peter.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump posted about Nancy Guthrie that he is directing all federal law enforcement to be at the families and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately. What should we expect to see from the federal government in coming days in the search to find Nancy Guthrie?
It's a very good question, Peter, and it's why I was on the phone with the FBI earlier this morning to ask that. And what they told me is that the FBI, again, is at the disposal of the state and local government. Whatever personnel or assets or resources that the state and local authorities and police need will be granted to them at the direction of the president, the FBI director, and the attorney general.
A different law enforcement issue. The FBI just found 1,000 samples inside an illegal biolab in Las Vegas. It is linked to a different biolab that was previously raided. There are ties to China. What does the president think the CCP might be up to here?
I haven't spoken to him about this specific investigation from the FBI, but I'm happy to, and I'm sure he's very glad that this is something the FBI discovered, and we'll make sure anyone who is involved in illegal activity will be held accountable.
And just one more about this weekend. At the Mar-a-Lago Super Bowl party, after the first 2 quarters, are the TVs going to be on the halftime show with Bad Bunny or the halftime show with Kid Rock?
I think the president would much prefer a Kid Rock performance over Bad Bunny, I must say that. Jennifer.
On the nuclear arms pact, we saw the president's post on that.
Yes.
But can you say, is there a temporary agreement with Russia to stand by the terms of the New START treaty while negotiations are happening?
Not to my knowledge. Again, to your point, Jennifer, I just do want to reiterate exactly what the president said. He wrote just moments ago, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. I completely rebuilt its military in my first term, including new and many refurbished nuclear weapons. I also added Space Force and now continue to rebuild our military at levels never seen before. We are even adding battleships, which are 100 times more powerful than the ones that roamed the seas during World War II. The Iowa, Missouri, Alabama, and others. I have stopped nuclear wars from breaking out across the world between Pakistan and India, Iran and Israel, and Russia and Ukraine, rather than extend New START, a badly negotiated deal by the United States, which I will add was renegotiated under former President Barack Obama, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. The president wants to have our nuclear experts work on a new, improved, and modernized treaty that can last long into the future, and that's what the United States will continue to discuss with the Russians. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
Did President Trump himself ever ask DNI Gabbard to head down to Fulton County, Georgia?
The president was asked and answered that question just yesterday. I've seen a lot of the media in this room get very caught up with the semantics of why Tulsi Gabbard is there. I will tell you why, and the president agrees with this, because election security is essential to national security. And as the director of national intelligence, it is a part of Ms. Gabbard's role to make sure that American elections are free of foreign interference and that American elections are safe and secure. And so the ODNI director is working with the FBI on this effort, and the president wholeheartedly supports both Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard in ensuring that American elections are safe, are secure, and are free of foreign intervention.
Is there any
Michael,
indication
go
that
ahead.
there's foreign
With
influence?
federal law enforcement's involvement in the search
Well,
for Nancy Guthrie.
excuse me one second. It's the media who has said that there's Russian interference in American elections. You guys have been saying that for many, many years. So the people
in Fulton
Well,
County.
the people in this room, considering that you all said for many years that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump, you should all be very happy that we finally have an administration that is looking into that, and we'll be happy to keep you posted. Michael.
Thanks, Caroline. With the FBI's involvement in the search for Nancy Guthrie now, has this search expanded nationwide outside of Arizona? And given Pima County's proximity to Mexico, is this now an international search?
Well, Michael, that would be a question for state and local authorities as they continue to oversee the investigation at this time. Again, the federal government and the FBI have offered any and all resources, but the state and local authorities are still leading the investigation, so I would direct you to them. I'm certainly not in a position to talk about it.
One other question, Caroline.
Sure.
Friday's talks with Iran, they were originally supposed to take place in Turkey. They've now been moved to Oman. Can you tell us the reason for that move?
Look, the president, diplomacy is always his first option when it comes to dealing with countries all around the world, whether it's our allies or our adversaries. And so Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling to Oman for those talks tomorrow, and we will see what comes of those. The president is standing by for an update from them. Sure, in the pink.
Thank you, Caroline. Cuban leader Miguel Diaz-Canel said today that Cuba would be willing to engage in dialogue with the United States only without pressure, without preconditions, on equal footing and with respect for sovereignty. But his government is denying what President Trump said, that they are all already holding talks. How would you respond to that?
I think the fact that the Cuban government is on its last leg and its country is about to collapse, they should be wise in their statements directed towards the President of the United States. But as I just reiterated, the President is always willing to engage in diplomacy, and I believe that's something that is taking place, in fact, with the Cuban government.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So the Office of Personnel Management released a final rule today that makes it easier to fire government employees who are not doing their job, basically. Does the President believe that there are people in his government still that are not following his agenda?
That's a good question. I have not asked him about that. I mean, look, it's a very big government, right? There are thousands of people who work for the federal government here in Washington, D.C. This administration has been very much focused on ensuring that we have an efficient and productive workforce for the American taxpayer. There's not a day that goes by where we don't show up and realize we are public servants working on behalf of the American people, and everybody in the federal government best have that mindset, or they won't be welcome to work for this administration. So I think it's a good thing that the Office of Personnel Management put this rule out. I think if people aren't doing their jobs, if they aren't showing up for work, if they're not working hard on behalf of this president, they're not welcome to work for him at all.
The New York City mayor is dealing with a $12 billion budget deficit. If he texted President Trump, would the president bail him out?
I'll leave that answer to the president himself, Ed. Kristen, go ahead.
One more follow-up on Deanna Gabbard. You said that the president supports the fact that she was there, but last night when he was asked about it, he said he didn't know why she was there. He didn't say that he directed her. Can you clarify on that? Did she go by herself and he learned later and supports it?
Well, did you look at the full entirety of his response? I was in the room for that NBC interview, Kristen, and he just said exactly what I told you, which is that election security is essential to national security. We need to ensure that our elections are free and are fair and are free of foreign interference. And he spoke about how Ms. Tulsi Gabbard is involved in that effort. So you're taking like the first 3 words that he said to one question and not looking at his entire response.
Follow up on what you said about foreign interference. You talked about 2016 and Russian interference, but what we've learned from these Georgia officials is what was seized by the FBI were ballots from 2020 in this Fulton County election center. Do you have any evidence that there was international interference in the 2020 election in this election center?
What I do have evidence of, and what the media seems to be undermining, is why Tulsi Gabbard is there in the first place. And I would point you again to federal law that clearly assigns the DNI and the office with the statutory responsibility to lead counter intel matters related to election security. This includes assessing risks to election voting systems, software, voter registration databases, and more, and analyzing foreign interference. And the ODNI is responsible for supporting the White House interagency action to secure our elections through intel analysis and vulnerability assessments. And they should be routinely collaborating with agencies like the DHS, the DOJ, and the FBI. So as for that question, it would be better suited to ask the Director of National Intelligence herself in her office. But what I'm telling you is that it is more than appropriate. In fact, it is Tulsi Gabbard's job to ensure that our elections are safe and secure. And that's exactly what she's been doing on the ground in Georgia. And I don't understand why anyone in this room, considering you're all American citizens, I believe, and like to vote in our nation's elections, should have any problem with that whatsoever. Natalie.
Thank you, Caroline. The president said that the administration should take a softer approach on immigration enforcement. He's also suggested for months that some migrant workers should be spared from these raids based on what they're doing. Is the administration going to continue to conduct large worksite raids as it seeks to target violent criminals? And can you clarify, is the federal government going to continue doing these deportation operations in blue cities where authorities say they don't want them?
Well, first, again, to the president's answer yesterday, the full context of his answer was that he'd like to see a softer touch, but we are always going to remain tough. That softer touch the president is referring to is that cooperation that is necessary between state and local authorities and federal government authorities to ensure that we can continue deporting illegal aliens from our communities without tons of agents having to go after one illegal alien. If the states and the local governments just turn over their illegal aliens to ICE at jails, as they should be doing, it requires one agent to deport that one illegal alien who can then go on their way to their home country in a peaceful manner. The escalation that we've seen take place in Minnesota is a direct result of the refusal of state and local officials to cooperate with the federal government and with ICE, which has led to these hostile and dangerous environments. And so we don't want that. Again, the president wants direct cooperation, and that's what he was referring to. As for worksite raids, I don't broadcast any future action that may or may not happen from the Department of Homeland Security. But again, the president's focus and the administration's focus is on targeting illegal alien criminals, especially those who have committed heinous crimes in our country, as evidenced by the few illegal aliens that I just shared with you here today.
Will ICE and Border Patrol avoid going to other blue cities where the local officials are saying, we won't work with you, we don't want you here?
Well, first of all, those local officials should be wanting to work with ICE. Why would any official, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, want murderers and predators in your city? It makes zero sense. It's an untenable position. The only reason Democrats are taking that position now is because their entire party platform is just anti-Trump. It makes no sense for the American people. They should be calling this White House, they should be calling Secretary Noem, they should be calling Tom Homan, and they should be saying, we want to work with you to remove the worst of the worst criminals from our city. Please come here. So yes, ICE is going to continue to do their job in cities and communities across the country, but it certainly makes it much easier when we have that level of cooperation and corroboration at the state and local level. In places like Florida, where there has been the arrest of thousands, tens of thousands of illegal alien criminals. None of you talk about that, or none of you hear about that, because these operations are going seamlessly and peacefully. Why? Because there is an intimate cooperation between the state government and the federal government, and that's what the president wants to see in all 50 states. In the whites, yes.
Hi, thank you, Caroline. Over the weekend, President Trump said that he was giving a serious look at endorsing in the Texas Republican Senate primary. We know that Minnesota and Georgia also have competitive, crowded primaries. Is he giving those races a serious look as well?
Well, I'm not allowed to speak from the podium on any future political endorsements the president may or may not make, but I know that he is watching all of these races across the country quite carefully. I won't get ahead of him on any potential endorsements. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions for you about the continuing resolution that the president signed for the Department of Homeland Security. What would be the repercussions for all of the agencies under DHS if no agreement is reached on funding when that deadline approaches next Friday?
Well, there will be grave repercussions for all of those agencies, but more importantly, frankly, for the American people who those agencies serve. And that's exactly what the president and the White House want to avoid. Again, we want to keep the government funded. We want the Department of Homeland Security, of course, to be up and operationalized and continuing as necessary to protect our homeland, to secure our border, to ensure the brave men and women of the United States Coast Guard are getting paid, the brave men and women of the United States Secret Service who protect the president, the vice president, and frankly, all of you in this building every day continue to receive the paychecks that they so well deserve. And so that's why the White House will engage in these talks with Democrats. But again, the president is never going to cave on this administration's core promise to deport illegal aliens from our country.
You said, Caroline, in your statement that there are certain proposals that Democrats are putting up that are non-starters. What are some of those non-starters?
There are a few, and it's a very good question, but I won't negotiate from the podium. I know the White House will be engaged in direct, serious talks with Democrats on this important matter. Natalie.
Thank you. In addition to launching Trump RX tonight, Trump has said that he wants to meet with insurance companies to lower healthcare costs. Do you have any update on when those meetings are
Yes, he does want to meet with insurance companies. That meeting will take place. I don't have an update on when it will be on the schedule, but the purpose of that meeting will be to continue to negotiate with these companies to ensure that more money is going back to the American consumer. And you're all going to see that on full display tonight at 7 o'clock with the formal launch of Trump RX. I'm telling you, this is going to be a very cool and unique event, so everybody really should tune in.
Can you clarify what the president said on the Diego Garcia deal? He said he didn't like it, now again he says he's for it.
He spoke with Prime Minister Starmer directly. He understands Prime Minister Starmer's position. and he supports it. But as the president reiterated in that statement, of course, the United States reserves the right to protect our assets. We still have a military base, of course, on the island of Diego Garcia. And so the president reiterated to the prime minister and to all of you that the United States will never waver, if necessary, in protecting our assets anywhere in the world, but including on Diego Garcia. And he supports the prime minister's decision. Elizabeth.
Just on that one, Caroline, can I ask you?
Said that he's now seeking.
John, I'll go to you after.
The president said he's now seeking $1 billion from Harvard, considerably more than before. What changed here, and how are negotiations going?
Well, look, this has been an ongoing negotiation and, frankly, a frustrating negotiation for the president and the administration because we want a deal. And it's very unfortunate that Harvard has dragged its feet in understanding they need to rectify the wrongs and the illegal behavior that took place on their campus over the course of the past several years under the previous administration. And so the president wants a justified deal to correct for that criminal behavior that took place on their campus. He is now demanding $1 billion from Harvard University, and Secretary McMahon will be continuing to lead this negotiation and these talks. John.
Caroline, thank you. You mentioned some polling earlier that was very compelling on deportations. Rasmussen came out with a poll today, said 75% of Republicans want all illegals deported. It seems like the conversation has shifted again to focusing only on deporting illegal aliens who are criminals. Is the president still committed to deportations of the 20 million illegals that came here under Joe Biden, or are you starting to cede that back?
Yes, and the president has always been committed to that, John. But we must prioritize, and the prioritization is on those tens of thousands of convicted criminals whom we know are still roaming our streets. ICE and Border Patrol and DHS have done a phenomenal job of removing tens of thousands of them. Actually, nearly 1 million people have been deported from our country over the past year, 2 million additional self-deportations. So nearly 3 million people have left the United States. But again, as you pointed out rightfully, Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed approximately 20 million people into our country illegally. So yes, of course, the president is committed to ensuring that America is and always will be a nation of laws.
Thank you, Caroline. Steve Bannon recently said, quote, "We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November." Is that something that the president is considering?
That's not something I've ever heard the president consider, no.
Can you guarantee to the American public that ICE will not be around polling locations or voting locations in November?
I can't guarantee that an ICE agent won't be around a polling location in November. I mean, that's frankly a very silly hypothetical question. But what I can tell you is I haven't heard the president discuss any formal plans to put ICE outside of polling locations. It's a disingenuous question.
Caroline, I had two questions regarding DHS. The first one is, one of the Democrats' main demands for DHS funding was to demask ICE agents. Is this something that the president is even considering?
Again, this is one of the specific points in the letter that went out by Senate Majority Leader Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. I won't negotiate the individual points from the podium, but it is obviously something the White House will be discussing with lawmakers on Capitol Hill in the coming days.
Is the administration concerned that the shakeup that we're seeing of DHS activity in Minneapolis could potentially embolden different obstructionist protesters around the country as they now have a playbook on how to get ICE out of their cities?
No, because what you saw yesterday with the drawdown of 700 agents only occurred because the condition that the President of the United States set for local states, local counties to turn over illegal aliens to ICE has been met. The vast majority of counties, nearly every single county now in Minnesota, has made an agreement to notify ICE when they are releasing an illegal criminal from their jail. This is a huge win for the administration. Again, it's a condition the president set out and has been met thanks to the tireless efforts of Mr. Homan. And as for the left-wing agitators who have been illegally obstructing ICE's immigration efforts, we are not letting that behavior go unnoticed or unpunished. In fact, just today, the Department of Homeland Security arrested this individual. He is a self-proclaimed Antifa member who has been threatening, doxing, harassing ICE He called for the murder of federal law enforcement officers. He encouraged bloodshed in the streets of Minnesota. He proudly acclaimed affiliation with the domestic terrorist organization Antifa. And the Department of Justice, thanks to the great work of HSI and the FBI, was able to locate and arrest this individual today. So we are committed to enforcing our immigration laws. We want that level of cooperation from state and local officials. And if people are illegally obstructing our federal law enforcement operations, if they are targeting, doxing, harassing, and vilifying ICE agents, they are going to be held accountable, like this individual here, who again is a self-proclaimed member of Antifa. He is a domestic terrorist, and he will be held accountable in the United States.
Caroline, just to follow up on Garrett's earlier question, I mean, you've talked a lot about the SAVE Act. I know you spoke with the president about it before you came out here. The president has gone beyond that, though. He's talking about Republicans taking over elections, states are agents of the federal government. So just to be clear, is the president only calling on Congress to pass the SAVE Act, or does he want Republicans to go further than that before the midterm elections?
The president is calling on Republicans, again, and Democrats to pass the SAVE Act. I will reiterate, requirement for voter ID to vote. That should be something that no American should oppose. In fact, we know that the vast majority of Americans support it. Requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote, which is not hard to do. We should be able to do that in this country. If you want to register to vote in the United States of America, you have to be a citizen in the United States of America. And this piece of federal legislation will direct states to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. I just had a conversation with the president about it.
Thank you, Caroline. I have two questions. Tariffs on South Korea. As you know, President Trump recently mentioned increasing tariffs on South Korea. When will the 25% tariffs increasing on South Korea begin? Secondly, what impact will this have on national security?
Sure. I don't have a timeline for you on that, but I will make sure that our trade team here at the White House gets you an answer swiftly and promptly. John.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Yesterday, President Trump, in the NBC interview, said that it bothers me that somebody is going after Bill Clinton. That somebody is the House Oversight Chairman, James Comer, a Republican. Why is the president bothered that they're investigating Bill Clinton and his Epstein ties?
Look, I think that the president has respect for the former president of the United States, Bill Clinton. He said yesterday himself they've shared a good relationship, and that's what he was reiterating in that NBC interview.
Go ahead, Caroline. Can you tell us a little bit about the agenda for tomorrow's talks with the Iranians? What will be the focus of the discussions?
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world. Take one Washington Examiner. Go ahead.
Lynchburg County, Virginia is their local law enforcement is defying the blue government's demand that they no longer cooperate with ICE. There's a lot of red counties that are thumbing their nose at the blue government, blue states leadership, telling them not to cooperate with ICE. Will this administration support those counties in any way? Support them either through legal help or?
Absolutely. And if there is a county in this country, whether it's red or blue, that seeks to cooperate with the federal government to remove violent, illegal criminal aliens from their communities, this administration is here to help. You've heard the calls from the president himself on asking Democrats and Republicans across the country to call on the Trump administration to work with them, not against them, in the matter of public safety and securing our homeland. Thank you all very much. You'll hear directly from the president tonight at 7 o'clock, and I hope everybody has a good weekend. Happy Super Bowl weekend. The president has wisely chosen not to make a prediction in Sunday night's game, but as a native girl from New Hampshire, go Patriots. Thank you, guys. afternoon, Jackie. Thank you for that. Thanks for coming in on a snow day for the rest of the government in the country. And as much of the country feels the impacts of that winter storm, President Trump continues to monitor the situation closely, and he has remained in constant contact with FEMA and emergency responders. President Trump also quickly approved 12 federal emergency disaster declarations within 24 hours for the states of Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, enabling these states to access critical federal resources to supplement their response efforts if needed. These declarations will help state-led efforts of turning power back on, clearing roads for emergency services, and keeping communities safe. The White House will continue to correspond directly with governors and local officials in the coming days, especially in those states that were harshly impacted by this storm. I would also like to address the chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend. Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Preddy, the brave men and women of federal law enforcement, and the many Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by illegal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York and, yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number 1, Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number 2, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days, but polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort. With that, I will answer your questions. And Jordan Conradson, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. Jordan Conradson from Gateway Pundit. I have a few questions. First, with respect to the shooting in Minneapolis, we're seeing massive outrage from mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raised a very important point, which I also believed I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media in picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday. Gabe. Sure, go ahead, Jordan.
I want to get your response to this. The Arizona Attorney General, just days before this shooting in Minneapolis, she seemingly encouraged rioters to go out, shoot, and kill ICE agents. And I'll quote her here. She said, "If you reasonably believe your life's in danger and you're in the house or in your car or on your property, you can defend yourself with lethal force." And she said that you can't tell if ICE agents are law enforcement or imposters, and it becomes an issue of whether you reasonably believed they were law enforcement. Do you have a response to that, and does the White House believe that she should be held accountable for these remarks?
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him, and he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country. Gabe, go ahead.
Be looking into her for justifying violence?
I would defer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders Czar Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials, and I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed, and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off, or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead and we will let the facts play out in this investigation. I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are they keeping the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation. I think he's made that quite clear with the various statements that you've seen him put out, and also the 4 points that the president has outlined as well to Governor Walz, and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the president goes for the parents of angel families, parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the president continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country. Why don't we go to the back? Kelly.
Caroline, does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts on the investigation lead itself.
Does he want the body camera footage to be released to the public? Now,
that's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Caroline, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications, as well as providing government resources to impede immigration enforcement operations?
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat your question?
How serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state Minnesota officials are communicating with demonstrators to basically impede immigration officials?
Well, we've definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country, and these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past weekend in Minneapolis. That would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for these three very simple and common sense points of cooperation so that ICE and local law enforcement can work together. Again, we are just asking for police to be police. And if you ask any law enforcement agent or official, they want to be able to work with their federal counterparts at the state and local level and vice versa.
Caroline. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions. One is looking forward. The role of Mr. Homan. Is he being sent by the president to diffuse the situation that exists right now on the ground? Is he the point person essentially for the White House in terms of trying to tamp down the tensions that exist right now in Minnesota?
Well, Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
And secondly, Caroline, can you talk a little bit about tomorrow's trip by the president to Iowa, what the purpose of that trip is, what the goals of that trip are?
Sure, yes. Tomorrow, President Trump will be traveling to Des Moines, Iowa. He will be making a local visit at a local business, and then he will be giving a speech on affordability and on the economy. And I know he very much looks forward to being there, to meeting with the great people of Iowa, but also lawmakers as well. Jake.
Caroline, a couple quick questions. First, does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
Yes.
And then just secondly, just on that Wall Street Journal reporting that we saw yesterday, the president said at some point that the immigration enforcement officers would leave Minneapolis. Did the Saturday killing of Alex Preddy expedite that withdrawal at all?
To your first question, the answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem. To the second question, I would point you back to what I said earlier. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures, CBP will no longer be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement will peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions, to remove violent criminals from American neighborhoods across the country.
To ask the president to remove the immigration enforcement officers?
He asked the president to scale down, and the president reiterated what the president put out in his statement yesterday and what I'm sharing with all of you as well. I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser and the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live, so you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots, there were no protests, nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense. Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Karoline, in this process, you continue to describe the situation in Minneapolis as chaos. Was there any mistake made by Secretary Noem that led the president to send Mr. Homan there?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Did Secretary Noem make a mistake which led to...
If she made any mistake that could lead the president to send Mr. Homan to Minneapolis?
No, as I already mentioned, Mr. Homan has been working alongside Secretary Noem and for the president over the course of the last year. And again, he's uniquely positioned to hop on a flight to Minnesota today to continue this correspondence with state and local authorities, and that's what he's going to be doing. Fran.
Karoline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement actions?
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right, of course, but Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede and obstruct lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime, and it's something that we've seen taking place in the streets of Minneapolis, which again is leading to these dangerous circumstances that these federal law enforcement officers have been forced to work within.
Back to the call with Governor Walz this morning, the president described it as respectful. He said, we seem to be on a similar wavelength, but you had strong criticism for the governor and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, just now. So could you explain the difference in tone between what the president had said in his True Social post and I think some of the criticisms that you just levied from the podium?
Fran, I think the criticisms that I laid out, I'm painting the picture for all of you in this room, are what led to the moment that we are in today, where Governor Walz and President Trump are having a conversation, a constructive and productive conversation to end the chaos and the lawlessness that has taken place in Governor Walz's state. Elena.
Thank you. I had a question. With Homan now going to Minnesota, is Gregory Bovino also going to remain in Minnesota overseeing these ICE operations?
Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man, and he's a great professional. He is going to very much continue to lead Customs and Border Patrol throughout and across the country. Mr. Homan will be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis.
And to follow up, given what we've heard from several Trump administration officials, people like Stephen Miller, as people point out, calling him a domestic terrorist, Bovino saying that Preddy was out to massacre law enforcement, why not require ICE agents to wear body cameras to clear up some of the disputes that we are hearing from witnesses and video footage versus what the administration has been saying?
Well, that's a policy question that I know the policy folks in the building are having with members on Capitol Hill, and I'll leave it to them and the president to make that decision.
And I just my final question is on, you were talking about the level of cooperation that the president talked about with Governor Walz. Will the administration commit to cooperating with local officials on this investigation into Alex Preddy?
The president spoke about this with Governor Walz and said he would have a discussion about it. He did not make a commitment, and so therefore I won't make that commitment here. I would just remind all of you in the media, because I've seen a lack of reporting on this fact, there are investigations into what took place on Saturday. The Homeland Security investigations and the FBI have teamed up for an investigation, and there's also an internal CBP investigation, an internal review of what is happening on the ground in Minnesota. The president supports those investigations, and as I've said repeatedly, he wants to see them move forward. Phil.
FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protesting?
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms, and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Will his mission continue to be focusing on illegal immigrants with a criminal history, or will it be on illegal immigration generally?
Mr. Holman will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. In just the last few days, I'm happy to provide this packet to anyone in the room. ICE has arrested multiple violent criminals, illegal aliens within Minnesota. Many of them have convictions for assault, driving under the influence, fraud. This individual here I'm looking at was an aggravated felon with multiple convictions for larceny, fraud, and forgery of checks, vehicle theft, drug possession, domestic assault, inflicting bodily harm on another, criminal convictions of larceny, identity theft, again, charged with driving under the influence. These are extremely dangerous people who Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have allowed to roam on their streets, and all the president is asking for is cooperation to arrest individuals like this and deport them from the United States of America. I'll take a couple more. Go ahead.
Okay, so this weekend the president posted that this is a cover-up of the fraud in the state of Minnesota. He also posted Minnesota is a cover-up. These both happened after the shooting. So given that these came after the shooting, what is the this here? What is the cover-up he's alleging?
Yes, it's a good question. I've spoken with the president about this at length. What the president is referring to is the fact that you have Governor Walz and, again, the mayor, who have been encouraging these left-wing agitators to come out and to harass and to dox and to threaten ICE and to make this conversation about and smear lies about federal law enforcement who, again, are just trying to do their jobs in an attempt to distract from the widespread, massive fraud that has taken place in their state. Billions and billions of dollars has been stolen from law-abiding taxpayers in Minnesota, and the administration continues to be very focused on getting to the bottom of it, and especially, and the president raised a good question over the weekend, with respect to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has a net worth within the millions, and one must ask themselves why and how is that possible? Is she connected to the fraud rings that we have seen taking place within her state and her own district? It's a question the American people are raising, and the president believes it's one worth answering. Haley.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to go back to some of the comments from Stephen Miller and Secretary Noem. You've made clear the president wants to see the investigation play out when answering some of the questions on the specific details. Is he concerned that some of those definitive statements made by other officials risks public perception of the credibility of those investigations now playing out?
Again, the president believes that these investigations are credible, they are continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out. Alex.
Caroline, thank you. Is the administration willing to separate DHS funding from other funding bills in order to avoid a broader shutdown?
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package, and we want to see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people, which would include, as you know, Alex, FEMA funding, and we are in the midst of the storm that took place over the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriations package that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis.
And secondly, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday. Wonder if you can walk us through with the president, how he'll be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking to President Putin, President Zelensky ahead of those meetings.
I'm not tracking any scheduled calls at this point in time. However, the president remains deeply involved, and of course he's being apprised by his advisors, namely Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Witkoff, on these talks. They had a multilateral meeting this past weekend, which didn't get a ton of coverage, but that was historic in nature, where the president's team has really brought two sides of this war to the table together to move the ball closer towards peace. So the president is not giving up on the peace process. He obviously just met with President Zelensky when we were in Davos, Switzerland, but I'm not tracking any calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy feat for the President of the United States, for the State of Israel, and frankly for the whole world. The President made the impossible possible, and so it's great news for the President, for the United States, for our allies, and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries have also signed up to join the newly established Board of Peace with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic accomplishment for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in Iowa tomorrow.
Did the president talk to us? Caroline?
It's nice to be with you. Welcome to the final cabinet meeting of 2025, a year that will go down as the most consequential and successful first year of any administration. They're saying that, not me. Oh, I say it too, actually, but a lot of people are saying it. And a lot of that is thanks to the men and women in the cabinet. The new and improved cabinet room, I might add. We took pictures down from the vaults. We have vaults downstairs with lots of pictures that haven't been exposed to the world for, in many cases, over 100 years. We brought them up, and we're using them as they should be used. But the cabinet room looks beautiful, like it should now. The Oval Office looks beautiful, like it should. It was not. It was like the rest of the country. It was in disrepair. 1 year ago, our country was dead, and said to me by many leaders, we had a dead country. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's true. The hottest country anywhere in the world. Think of that. In 4 long years of the Biden administration, there were just $1 trillion of new investments in the United States in 10 months. We've secured commitments of over $18 trillion. So they had, in 1 year, less than $1 trillion. That's in a period of 4 years. Think of it, 4 years they had less than $1 trillion. In 10 months we have more than 18 trillion. Is that right, Scott? It's even going to be higher than that.
It'll be higher.
And going up. And we're waiting for the Supreme Court case, and it's so important and so vital for this country because we're not only respected again, we're putting out wars by our trade policies, and we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and our country is wealthy again and secure again, and it's part of national security, and I hope that goes well. I think it's very important, but think of the number. We're going to be over $18 trillion in 10 months, and which is a record times probably 8 or 10 times, I think more than that, for any country. There's never been a country that's had that kind of an investment ever in history. And there's never been a country that's had half of that. It's a tremendous thing that's taking place. We have companies moving in from all over the world, from Mexico, from Canada, from Europe, from China, from Japan a lot. We just had Toyota is going to spend $10 billion, they just announced, on building new plants in this country. Our workers, they're going to be all workers. But they're spending a tremendous amount. So the stock market is at 46 all-time highs. And this last Friday, which is called Black Friday, was the biggest ever online sales that there's ever been by a lot. More Americans are working today than at any time in the history of our country. I mean, these are the facts we have to get out. And, you know, there's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. Just say it. Affordability. I inherited the worst inflation in history. There was no affordability. Nobody could afford anything. The prices were massively high. Do you remember when we took over eggs? You did a great job on that, Madam Secretary. Agriculture, Brooke. Eggs were 4 or 5 times higher than they had ever been. They said don't order eggs for Easter at the White House. And we ended up doing it, and we got the egg prices way down, lower than what they were before. But the word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. They say affordable. I watched the other day where some very low IQ congresswoman talked about affordability. She had no idea. Their prices were much higher. As an example, energy, gasoline, we're now at about $2.50 a gallon. We're going to be, I think, at $2 a gallon. We could even crack that at some point. I'd love to do it. And we could do it more easily if we weren't building up the strategic national reserves, which Biden emptied out before the election so that he could try and get elected, meaning he started it, then he got thrown out of the race. And she took over and she kept it going, and they emptied out these strategic national reserves, which are really meant for something else. They're not meant to keep people happy with their gasoline price. They're meant for war. They're meant for problems, big problems. He emptied it out, and then she continued it during the process of trying to get elected. Didn't work out too well for him. And they virtually brought it down to the lowest level, I believe, in history. And it didn't have much of an impact because the prices were very high. But our prices now for energy, but for gasoline, are really low. Electricity's coming down. And when that comes down, everything comes down. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam. They say it, and then they go on to the next subject. And everyone thinks, oh, they had lower prices. No, they had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Now, some people will correct me, because they always love to correct me, even though I'm right about everything. But some people like to correct me, and they say 48 years. I say it's not 48 years, it's much more. But they say it's the worst inflation that we've had in 48 years. I say ever. But whether it's 48 years or ever, it's pretty bad. We had the worst inflation that we've ever had. Since last January, we've stopped inflation in its tracks. And there is still more to do. There's always more to do, but we have it down to a very good level. It's going to go down a little bit further. You want to have a little tiny bit of inflation. Otherwise, that's not good either. Then you have a thing called deflation. And deflation can be worse than inflation. But we have it almost, we'll soon be at a perfect level. But we inherited the worst inflation. But we have 20 states that are now selling gasoline at less than the $2.75. Think of that, $2.75. And it was at $5 under Sleepy Joe. Grocery prices are down with the cost of Thanksgiving turkey this year down 33%. It was lower than 33% lower than under the Biden administration. Egg prices are way down 86%. Thank you. And mortgage rates, despite the fact that we have an incompetent chairman of the Fed, a real dope, who should reduce rates. I saw even Jamie Dimon said he should be reducing rates. I never saw Jamie Dimon say that. I wonder why he said that. But he really said it because he's right. But we have a guy that's just a stubborn ox who probably doesn't like your president, your favorite president. But they're going to be coming down. We'll be announcing somebody probably early next year for the new chairman of the Fed. I talked to Scott about taking the job, but he doesn't want it. You got the greatest job here.
Yes, sir.
Right? He said, no, I want to stay chairman. I want to stay right where we are, Treasury. And I think we're doing really great, aren't we? Huh?
We're doing great, sir, and it's a great team to be part of.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Under my executive order to lower prescription drug prices, which I think is the single biggest thing we've ever done that nobody writes about because you're fake news. I've made unprecedented deals along with Bobby and Oz and all of the people that work on it. A lot of people that you wouldn't even think work on it, but they do, to slash drug prices by 200%, 300%, 400%, 500%, 600%, 700%, 800%. Nobody's ever heard of it before because I instituted favored nations and no nation agreed to do it. And then I said to the nations, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to charge you 100% tariff, which is more money than we're talking about. And they said, sir, we'd love to do it. Please, we would be honored to do it. And they agreed that they would go along with the whole thing. Nobody thought you could do it because they felt, number one, you couldn't get the drug companies to do it. So we're paying, as an example, for the, let's call it the fat drug, F-A-T, for fat people. Anybody use it at the table? Don't ask. But the fat drug was $135. Think of that. For certain people, $1,300 for certain countries, $1,300 in New York. So in New York it was $1,300, and in London it was $135. And a friend of mine called me, he said, what is this? Why is it? He got used to paying $1,300. Well, now what we have it down to is, Bobby, what's the number? Like 150 or something? We have it down to a low number, don't we?
Yeah, it's around 125, 150.
Yeah, think of that. So we got it down from $1,300 to $125 to $140, depending on various countries. In other words, we're paying the lowest price, tied for the lowest price in the world. And people said, you could never do that because you couldn't get the countries to agree to it. I did. Every country agreed to it because I said, if you're not going to agree to it, that's okay, I'm going to charge you tariffs. And as soon as I said that, they said, we agree. And then we had to be a little tough with the drug companies, but they came along. The bigger problem was the countries. The countries just wouldn't go along with it, but they did. Every country. So we have reduced drug prices by 500, 600, 700, 800, 900%, depending on the drug, depending on the company, depending on all of the different factors involved. Nobody's ever even thought of drug reductions like that, price reductions. And I told you the story that in my first term I was so proud of myself because I reduced drugs. It was the first time in 28 years that drug prices were reduced. It was 1/4%. 1/4%. And I was so proud of myself. I said, it's the first time in 28 years that drug prices went down over the course of a year, over the course of a presidency. 1 year. 1/4%. I had a news conference. I was so proud. Now I got them down, not 1/4%. I got them down 400, 500, 600% and more. And the fake news won't write about it. And it's going to have a huge impact on healthcare because a big part of it's buying drugs, buying prescription drugs. It's going to have a huge positive impact because Obamacare is a disaster. I said it years ago, and I say it now, and the money should be paid, taken away from the insurance company. Obamacare was made to make the insurance companies rich. Their stocks have gone up 1,000% in a short period of time because the money goes to the insurance company. I want the money to go to the people. Let all the money go to the people, and let the people go out and buy their own health care. And I see on television, people are advertising now, we will help you buy health care. We will go out and help you buy. That's becoming like an industry because of what I said. So something's going to happen. It's probably not going to be easy because the Democrats, frankly, they don't want to make a good deal for the people. They just want to make a bad deal for the country. They want to make a bad deal for the Republican Party. But the Republican Party is united, and I will say that what I would like to do is the money doesn't go, trillions of dollars get paid to drug companies. And you still have lousy health care. Obamacare is horrible health care. We want it to go to the people and then let the people go out and buy their own health care, and they'll do great. They'll do great. So we're negotiating that now with the Democrats. While congressional Democrats want the largest tax hike in history, I proudly signed the largest tax cuts in American history with the great big beautiful bill. the great big beautiful bill, the biggest piece of legislation ever signed, and that includes the extension of the original Trump tax cuts. But it's the biggest tax cut ever signed, and it includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, so think of that. And in addition, you get, if you buy a car, this is great for our car industry because we have a lot of car plants. We're bringing back the automobile business. 60% of it was stolen because we had incompetent presidents or incompetent trade people. But 60% of it was stolen over the years, and now I think we're bringing it all back. I think we'll be bigger than we've ever been in the auto business. That's not even to mention AI, where we're leading China. You know, we're leading China by a lot. They're not going to catch us. We have to be smart, but if we're smart, they're not going to be able to catch us. They know that. They told me that. Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people, in addition to reducing debt. As you know, I inherited a lot of debt, but it's peanuts compared to the kind of numbers we're talking about. So we're going to be making a dividend to the people. And additionally, we're going to be able to reduce debt. And as time goes by over the next 2, 3, 4 years, those numbers are going to go up. And I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay.